Don't move. The man interviewing me wasn't looking at my resume anymore. He was staring at the old photograph that had slipped from my purse and landed face up on his black walnut desk. Where did you get this? His voice was quiet, but the entire room seemed to change around it. I swallowed. That's my mother. Adrian Cole lifted his eyes to mine, and for the first time since I'd entered his office, something cracked through that cold, unreadable expression. No, he said. That woman died 22 years ago. I forgot about the job. Forgot about the overdue rent notice folded inside my purse and the 40-minute subway ride that had brought me downtown wearing my best navy blazer and shoes I couldn't afford to replace. My mother died 6 years ago, I said. Her name was Emily Bennett. Adrian went perfectly still. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered beneath gray afternoon rain. But inside that office I could hear nothing except the faint ticking of a watch on his wrist. I'd known who Adrian Cole was before coming upstairs. Everyone did. 34. Head of the Cole organization. A mafia boss whose name opened doors people like me weren't supposed to know existed. His legitimate companies occupied half this building, but nobody mistook the tailored suits or polished marble for innocence. The strange thing was that Adrian didn't look threatening. He didn't need to. Two men had been arguing in the hallway when I'd arrived. Adrian had walked past them without speaking. Both had stopped. Now he picked up the Polaroid carefully. My mother looked maybe 25 in it, smiling beside a dark-haired man outside a lakeside house. I'd carried that photograph for years because it was one of the few pictures of her before I was born. Adrian studied the man beside her. Thomas Cole, he said. My stomach tightened. Who? My father. The words landed harder than they should have. Adrian turned the photograph toward the window, studying its faded corners beneath the daylight. Then his attention shifted to something behind my mother's shoulder. His eyes narrowed. How long have you had this? Since she died. Who knew you were bringing it here? Nobody. I wasn't bringing it anywhere. It stays in my purse. He looked at me again, and suddenly I understood that I wasn't being interviewed anymore. I was being evaluated. Mr. Cole, I came here for an administrative job. I know why you think you came here. Before I could answer, he touched a button beneath his desk. The door opened almost immediately. A tall man in a charcoal suit stepped inside. Nathan. Adrian handed him the photograph. Copy it. No digital record. Find out who placed Miss Bennett's application on my desk, then verify every person who touched it. Nathan glanced at me once. And the photograph. Adrian's gaze settled on a small detail near the edge of the image. A man's hand. A heavy ring. Check Moretti. Nathan's expression changed, barely. Then he left. Moretti? I asked. Adrian ignored the question. You're hired. I stared at him. You haven't asked me a single interview question. I don't need to. Then this isn't about the job. Something almost like approval flickered in his eyes. Good. I stood, anger finally pushing through my confusion. If you think I'm staying here so you can investigate my dead mother, you're wrong. Adrian didn't stop me. That somehow made it worse. I reached the door before his phone vibrated. He answered. Listened. His expression hardened. You're certain? Silence. Then he looked directly at me. Send it. I should have walked out. Instead, I waited. His computer chimed. Adrian opened a document, read it once, then slowly turned the screen toward me. At the top was my mother's name. Emily Bennett. Beneath it was an official death certificate. My mouth went dry. That's impossible. Adrian's voice remained calm. Apparently not. I stared at the date until the numbers blurred. According to the document, Emily Bennett had died 29 years ago, 3 years before I was born. I looked at Adrian. Then who was my mother? He took the photograph back from Nathan's empty chair and studied the smiling woman I'd loved my entire life. That's what someone wanted me to ask. Then he turned the photograph over, and beneath 20 years of faded ink was a mark I'd never noticed before. Adrian recognized it immediately. His eyes went cold. Claire, he said, using my first name for the first time. Someone didn't send you here for a job. I should have left. Instead, I heard myself ask, who sent me? Adrian Cole did not answer immediately. He turned the photograph over again, studying the faded mark as if silence itself were part of his investigation. That is the wrong question, he finally said. The right question is who needed you in this office. Nathan Cross returned less than 10 minutes later carrying a thin folder. He placed it on Adrian's desk without sitting. Her application never came through public recruiting. My stomach tightened. What does that mean? Nathan looked at Adrian, not me. Adrian gave a slight nod. Someone inserted your file directly into the final interview queue, Nathan said. Yesterday at 6:43 in the evening. I stared at him. I applied through a staffing website 3 weeks ago. Not for Cole Holdings, Nathan replied. For a company called Westbridge Administrative Services. I remembered the name immediately. A generic listing. Executive assistant. Good benefits. Downtown Manhattan. Nothing about the Cole organization. Adrian leaned back slightly. Westbridge does not exist. The room suddenly felt smaller. So somebody copied my application? And changed the destination, Adrian said. He opened the folder. They selected my office specifically. I looked at my purse, then at the photograph. But nobody knew I carried that. Someone did. His certainty frightened me more than anger would have. Adrian pressed a button on his phone. Move the port meeting to 8 tonight. Give Moretti the revised warehouse schedule. Nathan's eyes sharpened. The real schedule? No. One word. Nothing more. Nathan understood immediately and left. I did not. You are conducting mafia business while I am standing here. Adrian looked at me. You knew whose building you entered. Knowing your name and watching you run an operation are different things. For the first time, the corner of his mouth almost moved. Then pay attention. 3 hours later, I understood what he meant. Adrian had given the false warehouse schedule to exactly 3 senior men. By 6:30, Nathan returned with confirmation that Moretti representatives were already asking questions about that location. Someone inside Adrian's organization had leaked it in less than 2 hours. Adrian showed no surprise. He simply wrote 3 names on a sheet of paper and folded it once. You expected this, I said. I expected betrayal. I did not know where it lived. That sentence stayed with me. So did the way every man entering his office waited for Adrian to speak first. He never raised his voice, never threatened anyone. Yet grown men measured every word around him like a mistake might cost them everything they valued. I finally reached for my photograph, determined to leave before his world swallowed another inch of mine. The Polaroid caught the desk lamp as I lifted it. Something appeared across the back. Faint lines beneath my mother's handwriting. Wait. I moved closer to the light. Adrian stood beside me, leaving enough distance that I did not feel cornered. An address slowly became visible where old ink had faded into the paper. 17 Lake Hollow Road, Cold Spring, New York. Adrian read it once. His expression changed. Not fear. Recognition. You know it, I whispered. He took the photograph carefully. Yes. Whose house is it? Rain tapped softly against the windows while the city moved 40 floors below us. Adrian stared at the address as though 22 years had suddenly disappeared. Then his phone rang. Nathan's voice came through the speaker. The false schedule leaked exactly where you predicted. We have a problem, boss. One of the 3 people who received it has worked for the Cole family for 15 years. Adrian's eyes never left the photograph. Keep watching him. He ended the call. I pointed to the faded address. Adrian, whose house is that? He finally looked at me. It belonged to my family. My pulse stumbled. Then why would my mother have the address? His gaze dropped to the Polaroid. Because 22 years ago, that house burned. A cold feeling moved through me. Was she there? Adrian was silent for 1 beat too long. I was. He turned the photograph toward me and touched the faint outline of a woman reflected in one of the windows. And I think your mother was the person who got me out. Your mother may have saved my life. Adrian said it so calmly that for a second I thought I had misunderstood him. You were 4 years old, I said. If the fire was 22 years ago. His eyes met mine. I remember smoke. A woman's voice. A silver bracelet against my cheek when she carried me outside. My stomach tightened. My mother had worn the same silver bracelet until the day she died. 40 minutes later, Adrian's black SUV was heading north along the Hudson River. I sat beside him while Nathan followed in another vehicle. Adrian had not brought an army. He had brought information. Before we left Manhattan, he had already ordered property records, fire reports, old Cole financial ledgers, and every surviving document connected to 17 Lake Hollow Road. Even while chasing his childhood, he was still running his organization. His phone rang twice. The first call concerned Moretti. The second concerned the false warehouse schedule. Adrian listened, asked 3 questions, then said, change nothing. If he believes we suspect him, we lose everyone behind him. When he ended the call, I looked at him. You know who leaked it? I know who carried the information. That is not the same thing. Rarely. Cold Spring was quiet when we arrived. The house stood beyond a rusted gate, half hidden by trees. It had never been rebuilt. Only part of the stone structure remained, darkened by age and weather. Adrian stopped 20 feet from the entrance. For the first time, he looked less like the man who controlled rooms without raising his voice and more like someone listening to a memory he had spent years refusing to hear. Then it vanished. "Stay close," he said. "I am not one of your employees yet." That was not an employment instruction. I almost smiled. Almost. Inside, dust softened every sound. Adrian moved directly toward what had once been a study. My father kept records here. After 22 years, Thomas Cole trusted walls more than people. Adrian pressed his palm against a section of old wood paneling. Nothing happened. I noticed 3 shallow scratches beside the fireplace. They looked meaningless until I remembered the photograph. My mother had drawn 3 tiny lines beneath the address. "There," I said. Adrian followed my gaze. He pressed the 3rd panel. A narrow compartment opened. Inside was a weathered leather notebook. Adrian stared at it without touching it. My father's. He finally opened the cover. Most pages contained dates, initials, payments, and names I did not recognize. Several pages had been removed. Near the middle, one sentence remained in Thomas Cole's handwriting. "Emily knows everything." My breath caught. Everything about what? Adrian turned the next page. Gone. Torn cleanly from the binding. His phone vibrated. Nathan's voice came through. "Boss, Moretti moved men away from the warehouse." Adrian's expression hardened. They realized the schedule was bait. "There is more. Someone accessed Miss Bennett's apartment 45 minutes ago." I stood frozen. "What did they take?" Adrian asked. Nathan paused. "Nothing valuable. Laptop is there. Cash is there. Jewelry is untouched. They searched drawers, closets, storage boxes." Adrian looked at the notebook, then at the photograph in my hand. They were looking for something connected to Emily. My mouth went dry. How could they know about my mother already? Adrian closed the notebook. "Because whoever sent you to me is still watching." I turned toward the doorway, suddenly aware of every shadow in the abandoned house. "So what happens now?" "Now I stop following the trail they gave us." His voice was quiet again, controlled. "And make them follow mine." I looked down at the Polaroid. Afternoon light crossed its glossy surface, catching the window behind my mother's smiling face. Something pale appeared in the reflection. I tilted the picture. A child stood inside the house. Dark hair, small shoulders. A woman beside him, one hand resting protectively over his chest. Adrian took the photograph from me. His face went still. "That is me." I stared at him. "Then she really was here." "Yes." His thumb moved toward the woman's wrist, where a thin silver bracelet caught the light. My mother's bracelet. For one brief second, relief washed through me. We finally had an answer. Then Adrian noticed something else. Behind the woman stood another man, mostly hidden by the window frame. Only his hand was visible on the child's shoulder. On one finger was a heavy signet ring. Adrian knew it immediately. "Who is he?" I whispered. Adrian did not answer. He reached for his phone and called Nathan. "I want every movement Richard Cole has made in the last 48 hours. My heart dropped. "Cole." Adrian looked at the hand resting on his 4-year-old shoulder. My uncle. My uncle was standing beside your mother the night my family nearly lost everything." Adrian's words followed me all the way back to Manhattan. He did not speculate after that. He worked. By the time the skyline appeared through the rain, he had ordered Nathan to trace Richard Cole's calls, reopen 22-year-old financial records, and quietly identify everyone in the organization who still answered to Richard. "You think your uncle sent me?" I asked. "I think assumptions are expensive." Adrian glanced at the leather notebook resting between us. "I prefer evidence." At Cole headquarters, Nathan was waiting with another folder. Adrian entered his office, removed his coat, and became the Mafia boss again so completely that the haunted boy I had glimpsed at Lake Hollow seemed impossible. "Talk." Nathan placed 3 documents on the desk. Emily Bennett worked for Thomas Cole. My breath stopped. Doing what? Financial records. Private accounts. Transactions that never appeared in the legitimate books. Adrian's eyes sharpened. "How long?" "For years." Nathan slid another page forward. "Then she disappeared from every Cole record 6 days after the fire." I stared at my mother's signature. Same careful E, Same narrow B. I had watched her write grocery lists with that hand. Birthday cards. Notes inside my lunch bag. Yet she had never once told me she had worked for a mafia boss. She lied to me my entire life. Adrian looked at me. Or kept you away from mine. I hated how much that possibility hurt. Nathan opened the final document. There is more. Thomas authorized monthly payments to Emily for 11 years after the fire. Protection money? I asked. Adrian shook his head. My father would not label protection this way. He pointed to a code beside each transfer. Witness maintenance. Silence settled over the office. Witness to what? I whispered. Nathan answered. That part of the ledger is missing. Of course it was. Every answer seemed to arrive with a locked door behind it. Adrian walked to the windows. Moretti. Nathan hesitated. The false warehouse information was forwarded through an encrypted account belonging to someone inside our organization. Adrian turned. Name. Nathan placed a phone on the desk. On the screen was an access record. Nathan Cross. I looked at him. Nathan did not move. Adrian did not blink. Leave us, Adrian said. Nathan's jaw tightened once. Then he walked out. The door closed softly. Your own right-hand man? I asked. Possibly. You sound remarkably calm. Anger tells a traitor you found him. Adrian picked up the phone. Silence lets him take you to the person paying him. That was the moment I understood what made Adrian dangerous. It was not cruelty. It was patience. He had just been shown evidence that the man he trusted most might be betraying him, and his first instinct was not revenge. It was strategy. So you let Nathan keep working beside you? I let him believe nothing changed. And if you are wrong, then I learn why someone wanted me to suspect him. He opened Thomas's notebook again. I sat opposite him, turning the Polaroid beneath the desk lamp. Something about my mother's bracelet bothered me. I remembered a cedar box she kept locked in our apartment when I was growing up. After she died, I had packed it away without opening the false lining she once warned me never to damage. I have something. Adrian looked up. At my apartment. 20 minutes later, one of his men brought the cedar box from the building after confirming it was safe. Beneath the lining was a sealed envelope addressed to Thomas Cole. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a single handwritten page. Adrian read over my shoulder. Thomas, Richard knows about the accounts. He knows what I copied. If anything happens, do not trust the photograph. My pulse stopped. Do not trust the photograph? Adrian took the Polaroid and studied my mother's face again. His phone rang. Nathan. Adrian answered as though nothing had happened. Boss, Richard Cole just left his townhouse. He met with someone 10 minutes ago. Who? Nathan sent an image. Adrian opened it. My stomach dropped. Richard sat across from a man I recognized from the photograph's edge by the same Moretti signet ring. Adrian's expression became unreadable. Then Nathan spoke again. There is one more problem. Richard asked about Claire by name. Adrian slowly raised his eyes to mine. He knows she is with you. Adrian ended the call and placed my mother's letter beside the photograph. Then we finally know one thing for certain. What? His voice dropped almost to a whisper. You were never brought here, so I could discover your mother's secret. He looked at Richard's photograph on the screen. You were brought here because someone needed my uncle to know I had found you. Someone needed Richard Cole to know Adrian had found me. The thought should have made me run. Instead, Adrian did something I did not expect. He handed me my coat. You are leaving. Absolutely not. His eyes settled on mine. Claire. My mother left that letter. My apartment was searched. Your uncle knows my name. You do not get to turn me into luggage and send me somewhere safe while you decide what my life means. For several seconds, Adrian said nothing. Then he pulled out the chair opposite his desk. Sit. It was not surrender. With Adrian, nothing was. But it was the first time he had changed a decision because of something I said. Nathan entered 5 minutes later as if Adrian had never seen his name attached to the leak. Richard is back at his townhouse, he reported. Moretti moved 2 meetings after our warehouse bait failed. Adrian folded his hands. Give them something better. Tell our captains the missing coal ledger will be moved through Pier 39 tomorrow night. Nathan paused. There is a missing ledger? Now there is. I understood immediately. Adrian was not chasing Richard anymore. He was making Richard move. Nathan nodded and left. You just lied to your own organization. To 6 people. Why 6? Because 3 already know I am watching them. 3 do not. His calmness was unnerving. And Nathan? Adrian looked toward the closed door. Nathan gets the same lie. Before I could ask more, one of Adrian's researchers arrived carrying a small metal lockbox recovered from a storage unit rented under one of Emily Bennett's old aliases. The key had been taped beneath the false bottom of the cedar box. Inside was no ledger, no money, just a cassette tape wrapped in yellowed paper. Adrian found an old recorder in a conference room. My mother's voice filled the office through a soft hiss of static. I had not heard it in 6 years. My chest tightened so suddenly I had to grip the edge of the desk. Thomas, if you are hearing this, Richard knows. Adrian became perfectly still. Emily continued. He knows I copied the accounts. He knows someone inside Moretti helped me. But there is something worse. The photograph cannot be trusted. The tape clicked. Silence. That is all. I whispered. Adrian rewound it. Same words. Same abrupt ending. I grabbed the Polaroid and carried it beneath the brighter conference lights. She said the photograph cannot be trusted. Not that it is fake. Adrian came beside me. We examined every inch. Then I noticed the shadow beneath Thomas Cole's jaw. The lighting did not match my mother's. His face, I said. Adrian took the picture. It was altered. The man beside Emily had Thomas's face, but part of the original image had been covered decades ago. My certainty collapsed. Then maybe my mother was never standing with your father. She worked for him. That part is documented. Adrian turned the photograph slightly. Someone changed who was standing beside her. His phone rang. Nathan's voice came through. The Pier 39 story moved. Adrian checked his watch. 12 minutes. To whom? Richard contacted Moretti immediately. Adrian's expression did not change. Good. Nathan hesitated. There is more. Richard asked whether the ledger came from Lake Hollow. Adrian ended the call and looked at me. He knows we found the house. Then your trap worked. Part of it. I looked again at the photograph, frustrated by a reflection in the window behind my mother. Under the brighter light, I could see 4-year-old Adrian clearly. Beside him stood Emily. Behind them, a man's hand rested on Adrian's shoulder. The signet ring was unmistakable. Richard's. Wait. I brought the image closer. The altered man beside my mother could lie. Reflections could not. Adrian saw it too. His face went cold. Richard was there. Your uncle was inside the house before the fire. Adrian stared at the reflection for a long moment. Then another detail appeared beneath the glare. Emily was not looking at the camera. She was looking through the window at Richard, and her expression held no surprise. She already knew he was there. Adrian reached for Thomas's notebook and turned back to the torn page after Emily knows everything. Along the inner binding, one fragment of the missing paper remained. 3 handwritten words were still visible. Richard planned it. I looked at Adrian. Plan what? His phone vibrated again. This time the message was from an unknown number. Adrian read it once, then turned the screen toward me. There were only 7 words. Ask Claire what her mother stole from us. Ask Claire what her mother stole from us. I read the message twice before looking at Adrian. I do not know what that means. I believe you. His answer came too quickly for me to doubt it. Then he handed the phone to Nathan, who had returned moments earlier. Trace it. Nathan studied the number. It will be disposable. Then trace what happened before it became disposable. Nathan left without another word. Adrian turned to Thomas's notebook while I searched my memory for anything my mother had guarded too carefully. The cedar box. The bracelet. The photograph. Then I remembered something smaller. She had a bank key. Adrian looked up. Where? On her key ring. Brass. Number 217. After she died, I could never figure out what it opened. Within 30 minutes, Adrian had an answer. A private bank in White Plains had maintained an inactive safe deposit box under Emily's alias for 23 years. We drove there before closing. Adrian spent most of the ride handling the other war unfolding around us. The false story about the ledger had reached Moretti exactly as planned. Richard had moved money from 3 dormant accounts. Adrian ordered the transfers watched, not blocked. Why let him move it? I asked. Money leaves footprints when frightened. At the bank, box 217 contained 1 envelope and an old medical file. No ledger. Adrian opened the envelope first. Inside was a list of account numbers matching entries in Thomas's notebook, followed by 1 sentence in Emily's handwriting. Richard intends to remove Thomas and Adrian, then blame Moretti. My breath caught. The fire. Adrian read it again. It was never an accident. His voice remained controlled, but his hand rested motionless against the paper. Suddenly his childhood memory had a shape. Richard had wanted control of the Cole organization. Emily discovered the financial trail, copied the accounts, and warned Thomas. That is what she stole, I said. Proof. Adrian shook his head. Copied, not stole. Whoever sent that message still believes the evidence belongs to them. I opened the medical file. My name was printed across the first page. Claire Bennett, age 4. The date was 3 weeks before the Lake Hollow fire. I was there, I whispered. Everything inside me went cold. I had spent years believing my mother and I lived in Connecticut during that period, but the emergency contact listed on the form was Thomas Cole. Adrian read it over my shoulder. This changes the timeline. Why would your father be my emergency contact? Adrian did not invent an answer. He called Nathan. Find Claire's biological father. Start 27 years ago. Cross-reference Emily with every Moretti associate and every witness connected to my father's accounts. Nathan went silent for a moment. Boss, there is another development. Richard moved the money into 6 accounts connected to Moretti. Let him. You expected that? I needed to know which Moretti faction he owned. Adrian looked at me as he spoke. He was not protecting me from his world. He was dismantling a conspiracy while I stood inside it. An hour later, back at Cole headquarters, Nathan arrived with a sealed genealogy report recovered from an archived legal file. Emily requested this 22 years ago, he said. Thomas paid for it. My name appeared beside another one that had been blacked out. Nathan had recovered the original scan. I stared at the name beneath the redaction. Daniel Mercer. Who was that? Adrian asked. Nathan's expression was grim. A financial investigator who worked with a Moretti accountant before disappearing 26 years ago. My pulse quickened. 26 years. The year I was born. He was my father? According to the file, yes. Adrian's eyes narrowed. Then Emily was not only protecting evidence. She was protecting a witness's child. His phone vibrated. Nathan checked his own phone at the same instant. Something had changed. Boss, he said quietly. Richard just canceled every meeting and left Manhattan. Where is he going? Nathan turned the screen around. A highway camera had captured Richard's car heading north. Toward Cold Spring. Toward Lake Hollow. Adrian stood. He knows we opened the box. How? I asked. Adrian looked at Nathan. Just for a second. Nathan looked back without blinking. The silence between them told me more than words. Then my phone buzzed. A photograph had arrived from an unknown number. It showed the ruins at Lake Hollow, taken only minutes earlier. Beneath it was one sentence. Your mother did not save Adrian by accident. Ask him what Thomas promised her in return. Ask him what Thomas promised her in return. I held my phone toward Adrian. He read the message once, then looked at Nathan. Nobody follows Richard to Lake Hollow. Nathan frowned. Boss, let him believe he is ahead of us. Adrian turned to me. My father kept promises in writing. 10 minutes later, we were inside Thomas Cole's private archive beneath the headquarters, a room Adrian had inherited with the organization but rarely opened. Nathan stayed upstairs, feeding Richard carefully selected information while Adrian searched 22-year-old files. You still trust him? I asked. Trust and usefulness are different things. That is a terrible way to live. Adrian stopped searching. For a moment, the Mafia boss disappeared behind something quieter. It keeps people alive. Does it keep them close? His eyes held mine. Then he looked away. No. It was the most honest answer he had given me. We found Thomas's agreement inside a folder marked Mercer. My father's name. Adrian opened it carefully. Emily Bennett would receive new identities, financial protection, and permanent separation from Cole operations. Claire Bennett would remain outside all family business. In return, Emily would preserve copies of Daniel Mercer's evidence until Thomas could remove Richard without starting a war inside his own organization. He promised to protect us, I whispered. Adrian's jaw tightened. And failed. You were 4. I inherited his promises with his organization. Before I could answer, Nathan called. Richard reached Lake Hollow. Moretti sent 2 cars north, but they stopped 5 miles away. Adrian's expression sharpened. They do not trust him. There is more. The Pier 39 bait worked. Richard transferred money to 6 Moretti accounts, and each account traces back to the same faction. Adrian wrote one name on a page. Vincent Moretti. Now we know who Richard bought. I watched him make 3 calls. No shouting. No threats. He froze Richard's access to Cole businesses, redirected 2 contracts away from Vincent Moretti, and summoned every senior captain to Manhattan for midnight. In less than 5 minutes, Richard went from hidden rival to isolated man without Adrian ever leaving the room. "That is your plan?" I asked. "Part of it. And the other part?" Adrian looked at my mother's photograph. "Make him desperate enough to tell us why he wanted you here." Nathan arrived with another file just before midnight. My father's records. Daniel Mercer had not belonged to the Moretti family. He had been investigating one of their accountants and discovered Richard secretly moving Cole money through Moretti-controlled companies. Emily helped him copy the evidence. They fell in love during the investigation. I stared at the date on their marriage license. "They were married?" Quietly, Nathan said. "6 months before you were born." Something inside me loosened. For the first time, my father was not a blacked-out name. He had been real. He had loved my mother. He had known me. Then Nathan placed another document down. Daniel disappeared when I was 8 months old. Richard had spent years searching for the copies Daniel left behind. "That is why Thomas protected us," I said. Adrian nodded. "And why Richard wanted me to see your photograph?" The answer hit me before he explained. "He expected you to think my mother betrayed your father." "Yes. And he expected you to think I came here intentionally." Adrian's gaze hardened. He wanted me to remove the last person connected to the evidence for him. My throat tightened. "But you did not." "No." "Why?" Silence stretched between us. Adrian looked at the photograph, then at me. "Because frightened people lie differently than guilty people." It was not romantic. Somehow it meant more. Nathan's phone vibrated. He read the message and looked at Adrian. "Richard wants a meeting. He says he will trade the truth about Emily for the missing ledger." Adrian slowly closed Thomas's file. "Good. We do not have the ledger," I said. Adrian stood and adjusted his cuffs. That small movement changed the room. The quiet man vanished. The Mafia boss was back. "Richard does not know that." He turned to Nathan. "Tell him I accept." Nathan nodded. Adrian added, "Tell him I will bring Claire." My heart stopped. Nathan looked at him sharply, then understood something I did not. A faint smile appeared on his face. "He will believe that." When Nathan left, I stared at Adrian. "You are trading me?" Adrian walked to his desk, placed the photograph beside his father's notebook, and finally revealed the move he had been building toward. "No, Claire. I am giving Richard exactly what he has wanted for 22 years. "What?" Adrian's eyes went cold. "A reason to stop hiding." Richard agreed too quickly. Adrian said it while fastening his watch, his voice so calm that I almost missed the warning beneath it. "Then why are we going?" "Because he thinks I am bringing him what he wants." "Me?" "No." Adrian looked at me. Certainty. The meeting was set for midnight at a private event hall beside the Hudson, closed for renovations and owned through one of Richard's shell companies. I expected Adrian to surround the building with men. Instead, he spent the next hour making phone calls. He moved loyal coal captains into positions across Manhattan, suspended Richard's authority over 3 businesses, and sent documented proof of Richard's secret payments to senior Moretti figures who had no loyalty to Vincent Moretti. He was not preparing for a confrontation. He was removing Richard's power before Richard realized the meeting had begun. "If I go inside," I told him, "I decide what I say." Adrian studied me. "Agreed. And nobody gets hurt because of me." A pause. "My objective is the truth, not punishment." It was the closest thing to a promise I expected from a mafia boss. Nathan drove us. That bothered me until Adrian quietly said, "Watch him." Inside the empty hall, Richard Cole waited alone beneath dim ceiling lights. He was older than Adrian, silver-haired, perfectly dressed, and smiling as though this were a family dinner. "Claire Bennett," he said. "You look like Emily." My skin went cold. Adrian stepped beside me, not in front of me. "The ledger." Richard smiled. "First, the girl. She is standing here. You know what I mean." Adrian said nothing. The silence stretched until Richard's smile weakened. Then a side door opened, and Vincent Moretti entered. My heart jumped, but Adrian barely glanced at him. "There it is," Adrian said softly. Richard frowned. "What?" "The part 1 needed confirmed." Adrian's phone vibrated. He read the screen. 6 accounts frozen. 3 captains removed from your network. Every coal business you controlled now answers directly to me. Richard's face changed. Adrian continued. "And Vincent's family received the records showing he accepted coal money without their approval." Vincent stared at Richard. "You said he did not know." "He did not," Richard snapped. "He does now," Adrian said. "That was when I understood." Adrian had never intended to trade anything. The meeting existed to place Richard and Vincent in the same room after their alliance had already been exposed. Richard turned toward Nathan. Do something. Nathan did not move. Adrian looked at him. Tell him. Nathan exhaled slowly. The warehouse leak was real. The later leaks were not. Richard stared. Nathan continued. Adrian found my access trail days ago. He let you believe I was still yours. I remembered Adrian saying silence lets a traitor lead you to the person paying him. You were working for Adrian? I asked. Nathan's expression tightened. Richard had leverage over my family for years. Adrian discovered it and gave me a choice. And you chose him. I chose to end it. Richard looked around the room as if searching for a door that had disappeared. Adrian finally stepped closer to the table. 22 years ago, Emily copied your accounts. Daniel Mercer found your Moretti connection. You tried to make my father believe Emily betrayed him. When that failed, you arranged the fire and spent decades searching for the evidence. Richard's smile returned, smaller now. Almost. He looked at me. Your mother was cleverer than all of you. I felt Adrian become still beside me. What does that mean? Richard laughed softly. You think Emily accidentally left Claire that photograph? I reached into my purse and touched its worn edge. Richard shook his head. That picture was never evidence. It was an invitation. Adrian's eyes narrowed. To whom? To you. Richard looked directly at him. Emily knew Thomas would never finish what he started. She knew one day you would inherit the Cole organization. She needed Claire to walk into your world carrying the one thing you could not ignore. My throat tightened. How would she know I would ever meet Adrian? She did not. Richard's gaze dropped to my purse. That is why she created more than one path. Adrian's phone rang. Nathan answered his own at the same moment, listened, then looked at us in disbelief. Boss, our archivist found something inside the backing of Emily's photograph after comparing the copy under ultraviolet light. Adrian's expression sharpened. What? Nathan swallowed. A second address. Richard smiled. There it is. I stared at him. What is there? His smile disappeared. The reason your mother was willing to spend the rest of her life hiding. Adrian stepped closer. The ledger. Richard shook his head. Something much worse for men like us. He looked at me. The truth. The truth was hidden 17 miles from the house where Adrian almost lost his life. By sunrise, Richard Cole no longer controlled a single Cole account, company, or captain, and Vincent Moretti had been abandoned by the people whose loyalty he had quietly sold. Adrian did not celebrate. He simply gave Nathan instructions, then drove with me to the second address hidden inside my mother's photograph. It led to a small storage facility outside Cold Spring. Unit 47 contained no fortune, no weapons, no secret empire. Just 3 cardboard boxes and a sealed letter with my name on it. My hands shook when I opened it. Claire, if you are reading this, then the photograph finally reached someone willing to ask the right questions. I stopped breathing. Adrian stood several feet away, giving me something nobody expected from a man like him. Space. I continued. My mother explained that Daniel Mercer, my father, had uncovered years of financial records connecting Richard to secret Moretti transactions. Emily copied those records because Daniel knew one accusation would never survive against powerful men. After Daniel disappeared, Thomas Cole promised to protect both of us and preserve the evidence until he could remove Richard without tearing his organization apart. Then came the fire. Emily saved 4-year-old Adrian because Thomas had hidden him at Lake Hollow after learning Richard's plan. She took me away that same night. I had been 4 years old too, sleeping in another room of the house, too young to remember anything clearly. We were both there. I whispered. Adrian looked at me. Yes. Suddenly the medical record made sense. Thomas had been my emergency contact because my mother had trusted him with my safety while she and Daniel gathered evidence. The false death certificate had been created afterward to convince Richard that Emily Bennett no longer existed. But the final page changed everything. Emily had never intended the photograph to prove Richard's guilt. She had altered Thomas's face deliberately because anyone finding the picture too early would chase the wrong man. The photograph was a key. The address led to Lake Hollow. Lake Hollow led to Thomas's notebook. The bracelet identified Emily. Richard's ring exposed his presence. And the hidden second address could only be discovered after someone examined the original closely enough. My mother had built a trail that required patience instead of power. Inside the final box were copies of Daniel's financial records, Thomas's signed statements, and Emily's account of everything she witnessed. Enough to destroy Richard's version of the past without destroying the people trapped inside it. Adrian read the last letter silently. "She knew you might become Mafia Boss?" I said. "She knew I would," he corrected quietly. "My father prepared me for it from childhood. And she trusted you anyway." Adrian looked at the photograph. "No, she trusted the man I might choose to become." 3 months later, Richard's network was gone. Vincent Moretti had lost the support that made him useful. Nathan remained at Adrian's side, no longer carrying Richard's leverage in silence. Adrian remained exactly what he had been when I first walked into his office, the mafia boss at the center of the Cole organization. But something had changed. His rules. No secret debts inherited by children. No families used as leverage. No loyalty purchased through fear alone. He did not become softer. He became harder to corrupt. I returned to his office on a cold Monday morning and found an employment contract waiting on the desk. "You cannot be serious," I said. Adrian looked up. "You originally came here for a job." I almost laughed. "That feels like several lifetimes ago. The position is still available. Is this another excuse to keep me close?" Silence. Adrian could command an entire room with 2 words, yet that question stopped him. Finally, he stood. "No." His voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "It is me asking you to stay." I looked at the man my mother had once carried out of a burning house, the mafia boss who had uncovered a betrayal 22 years old without becoming the kind of man who created it. Then I looked at the contract. I signed. Months later, the old Polaroid still lived inside the top drawer of Adrian's desk. He never framed it, never displayed it. He said some things mattered more when nobody else could see them. I understood. I had entered his office believing I needed a paycheck. Adrian had believed he needed control. Neither of us knew that a faded photograph had been waiting years to return 2 stolen histories to the people who survived them. Adrian still ruled his world through loyalty, strategy, and silence. But my mother had left him one final lesson from the past. Power could close almost any door. Truth was what opened them again.